Hello and welcome to Candid Conversations. I'm Yemisi and I'm so excited about our guest today. She is someone who's very dear to me. We've worked together on numerous projects. I see her as a motivator, someone who encourages people. A lot of people know her as a candidate running for office, but I know her as my big sister, Felicia Folarin. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
So as I mentioned earlier, we kind of know each other pretty well, but for people who don't know you, tell us about Felicia.
Well, I'm Felicia Folarin. I'm an insurance agent. I'm a wife. I'm a sister. The first of 6 children from my mother, and came in this country on October 1st of 1998 as a student. I came here to study for my master's, and here I am.
So what brought you to the United States? I know you mentioned you came to study for your master's. They're great universities in Nigeria. Why did you decide to come to the United States as opposed to pursuing higher education back home?
So after I graduated from college with my first degree, I started working with one of my uncles in an oil company. And I wasn't getting promoted. And I thought maybe if I went and got a higher degree and get an exposure, international exposure. If you're in the oil industry, you want to get that. I thought that would help get promotion. And besides, a lot of the schools in Nigeria at the time were always getting shut down due to one situation or another. And I really wanted to get this done quickly. So I started applying to different schools in Europe and in the United States. And the first admission I got was here. So I decided to come here.
What university did you attend?
Well, the university that gave me admission was Florida Metropolitan University.
Okay.
And so when I came in this country, I went straight to Florida. But while I was there, I couldn't find anyone that I could relate with. I didn't have a lot of friends. I had friends here in Maryland. I had a lot of people here who were friends of the family. And every time I called, they just tell me if I could transfer my school to Maryland or DC, then maybe that will help. And I might be able to get a part-time job to support myself while I was going to school, because I couldn't get that done in Tampa, Florida, where I was. So I started applying. I had already done 1 semester at FMU.
Okay.
And some of the universities here wouldn't allow me to transfer all of my credits to Maryland. The only university that will allow me to transfer at least 8 credits was the University of the District of Columbia. And being an international student and paying so much, I wasn't ready to go through some of those classes again, which is why I chose the University of the District of Columbia at the time.
Okay.
And so that's how I moved to the DA.
And what did you get your degree in?
I got my degree in finance. I have an MBA with the specialization in finance.
Okay. So after you got your MBA, you went into insurance, I understand. But now you own an insurance company. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how that happened?
Sure. So when I came to Maryland, of course, I needed a job to support myself. I had already paid my school fees, but I needed to support myself. I didn't know how expensive the cost of living was going to be, accommodation and transportation and all that. So I needed a job. And I was offered a job by a man that I admire a lot, Mr. Adeyale. At the time, he was an insurance agent. He was an independent agent. He needed help. And somebody introduced me to him, and he was so happy to have me. So I took the class and got the license, and I was working there part-time while I was going to school just to support myself. And while I was going to school, I played the visa lottery and I won. And that was my pathway to citizenship. And then when I graduated, after I got my citizenship, I decided I wasn't going to go back home yet. And so my vision or my dream of getting promoted in the oil company went away somehow. I don't know, I'm sorry. And so I decided I wanted to work with the banks. I specifically wanted to work with the World Bank or IMF for one of these organizations because I like to travel and I really wanted to work in the bank. And so I started applying even after I graduated. And I was still working part-time as an insurance agent. And while I was waiting for IMF to get back to me. We had been communicating back and forth to see what was available or what I could get. And then I met a lady who was referred to me, who was a recruiter for Allstate Insurance. She came to me and offered me an opportunity to own my own business. That was how she sold it to me. And, you know, she told me a lot about, you know, what the benefits were. I could retire on these, I could build equity on these, and, you know, all of that. And it sounded interesting to me, so I decided to pursue.
So you were pretty young when they were encouraging you to start your own business.
I was in my late 20s at the time.
Wow. And you went ahead and went for the jump. Yes,
I went ahead. I mean, you know, you have to find out about it. It was going to cost a lot of money. I needed $50,000 to start. I didn't have $50,000. But luckily for me, you know, as soon as I started working, somebody gave me an advice that I took to her. And he told me, if you're going to build wealth in this country, you need to own your own home. And so even while I was working part-time, he encouraged me to buy my own house, which I did. At the time, it was a condominium. It was a 2-bedroom condo. It was a short sale, I believe, one of those properties. And I didn't have a lot of money. And he said I could do it. He encouraged me to get it. And so at the time, it was a $45,000 house, and I didn't need a lot of money to go to closing. And at the time, when we calculated what it was going to cost in mortgage every month, it came up to about the same amount I was paying in rent. And it was a 2-bedroom, so I figured I could rent out a room to cover my other expenses. And then I would still be paying what I was paying in rent or less, and I'll still be able to, I would be able to build equity in my own home. That home gave birth to my business, because at the time I was going to start my business, I had so much equity on the house. I was able to take that money to put in my business, and that was how I got started.
Wow. I think, you know, at that time, at such a young age in your 20s, that's having the right mentors around you really helped change the pathway of your life from initially wanting to go back to Nigeria to stay here, finish your degree, start working part-time to become a homeowner, and then eventually a business owner. So let's fast forward to after owning your business for several years. You're running for the position of county at large for Prince George's County. How did that come about?
Well, that's interesting, because I was never interested in running for office. I mean, it wasn't a dream I wanted to pursue. But I was sitting in my office one day, just like the insurance business dropped on my lap, and I got a call offering me the opportunity to run for this position. And I thought it was a prank call, because I wasn't a politician. I'm a small business owner. I'm an insurance agent. I like to serve people. I like to take care of people, you know, and that's what I do. So I tried to explain that to the caller, who I was and how they got me mixed up with someone else that I know and I'm close to. And I gave them the name and the number, and he laughed and said, well, no, I don't think I made a mistake. So I said, I think you got the wrong number, honestly, and I have a customer, I have to call you back.
You have a customer and I have to call you back.
And I hung up the phone. So he called back, and then I got a call from a member of my church, reached out to me and told me someone was going to call about this position and opportunity. And I said, the person already called. I thought they made a mistake, because they called me and think they meant to call someone else. And he said, no, no, no. And he started to encourage me and talk to me about it. And I said, well, that's not a decision I can make on my own. You know, I had to call my husband, I had to call my mentors, I had to call a lot of people. You know, after about 3 people had already called me at this time before I decided I was going to talk to people. And when I got the call, I had only 3 hours to decide, because this was at about 1 p.m. and the opportunity was going to close at 5 p.m. So I had pretty much until 5 p.m. of that day to decide. And so I called my husband, I called one of my mentors. I tried to reach Pastor Gandhi at the time. He wasn't around. So my mentor told me, he asked me 2 questions that stood out to me. Was one, my mentor told me, he asked me, how is this going to benefit the people? And I said what came to my mind at the time, that, well, There's no African or minority in office that I know, in any elected office in Prince George's County right now. And I think this would be huge for the minority or the African community. That was one. And I also said that, well, there's an issue in the educational sector in the county. And I think my story might be able to inspire someone or change something in that area. So that's the only thing I could think of at the time. And he said, well, that was good enough. I think you should go for it. You have the opportunity to withdraw if you decide not to continue. But if you don't sign now, the opportunity is gone. So go ahead. Eventually, I was able to read Pastor Gandhi, my pastor. And the one thing he said that stood with me was, it's a call to serve. I had questions. And all the questions I asked him, like, Republican in Prince George's County, the ratio is 11-1. How am I going to, I'm African, I have an accent, how am I even going to talk to people about this? And he said, God does not order what he cannot pay for. You were called and you've been given an opportunity to serve. What you decide to do with it is your choice.
And one of the things that I'm noticing about our conversation is that you've had several opportunities and you've been called several times. How did you running as a Republican come about? Because you rarely see Africans in political office, period. And an African who's a woman running for a Republican position is almost unheard of. And I just want you to talk a little bit about how that came about and, what your stands on African Republicans are. I mean, I'm sure you agree with it because you are an African Republican, but just talk to us a little bit about that, because this is not something we see pretty often.
You're right. For me, I don't see this as a party affiliation issue. For me, a lot of people make that judgment before they meet me. But once I have the opportunity to talk to them, they look beyond the party affiliation because they know I'm not about that. I'm about the issues. I'm a child of God. I'm about making a difference and making a change. And so I've been going around to different churches and talking to people in different places. I went to a church recently. It's an all-white church. And I had met a gentleman at one of the parades that I attended. And while talking to me, he said he felt a tug in his heart, and he felt like this was a movement and this thing that we're doing is bigger than me, myself. He was saying that to me. I didn't realize at the time he was a reporter who worked for the Washington Times. And we spoke at length. We spoke for a long time. And then he sent me an email later inviting me to, asking me more questions, personal questions about myself. And I said I would call him back. Then he called me again the next day asking me questions. I was a bit skeptical about it because I thought, he's a reporter. I don't know who is listening. And I don't know if this is a setup. So I told him to send his questions. And I emailed him back. Based on my answers, he said he would like me to come to his church because he found out that, because she's a Christian woman, she's always talking about church. And I was talking about my church. And I shared with him the message that Dr. Otabil preached at my church, which was one of the reasons I actually decided and agreed to run for office.
Do you remember the title of that message?
I don't remember the exact title of the message, but I remember the message. And the message was that we, as the body of Christ, need to get off from our comfortable zone and get involved. And that we needed to take position in authority in the community where we live. He talked about taking to the position of government, even in the military, the entertainment industry, that he talked about how we complain about not liking what our children are watching on television, but really we're not encouraging any of the youth to get involved in entertainment, to be able to project what we think the children should be watching, and how the world has taken over and is drawing away the children and the youth away from the Lord, rather than it being the other way, us attracting the world back into the Lord. And so he talked about all of that, and he talked about, how we left the government to the politicians, and we don't see ourselves as politicians. you know. And I've seen this happen in some of the churches that I've been to, where the pastors don't want to talk politics, but then we're affected by the decisions that are being made. And eventually we have to live by the rules that are being set by the people in power.
Yeah.
While we don't have anyone there, we don't have an advocate speaking on our behalf. And yes, we have people who are in position of authorities, who are in elected offices, who are Christians, but the things they do are contrary to the word of God.
Yeah.
And so how do you deal with that? And so I said to him that this is one of the reasons why I agreed to run for office, to make a difference, to have a different story, and to let the world know that you can be a Christian and do good. And so we have to create the difference and project what the Lord has, you know, instilled in us to do. And so after speaking with him, he invited me to his church. And he wanted me to meet with the leadership of his church. And so I went with my team to meet with the leadership of his church. And at this time, they had already gone to do their investigation. He's a reporter. He's an investigative reporter. So they had Googled like about my church, my pastor. They had a lot more information about the church than I was even prepared for. But they were impressed. And while I was speaking with the leadership, I told the pastor that, listen, yes, I'm a Republican in Prince George's County. Ratio is 11-1, Democrat to Republican. I'm a Christian. I'm a small business owner. I'm an immigrant and I have an accent. But I'm standing here bold before you today to tell you we can make a difference. And this is not about party affiliation for me. It's about making a difference. It's about getting involved. And if I can do it, you all are sitting here. You have to encourage your youth to get involved and do the same. And I believe that me running for this office is not about me. It's to send a message to the Christian community, to everyone generally. If I can do it, anyone can do it. And there's a need and there's a call. This is a call. This is an outreach. If you don't like what you're seeing, get involved and make a difference in whatever way you can. Republican or Democrat, it's about making a difference in the lives of the people. And if you have signed up to serve, then you want to serve the people that you have, signed up to serve.
So we all know that politics can be very personal. And, I've heard of couples not really getting along. One is a Democrat, the other is a Republican. And, relationships being broken. Have you lost any friends because of your political affiliation?
Actually, no. And that's an interesting point, unless people are pretending. But since I started this journey, everyone who has listened to me, everyone supports me. Everyone has come on board to do whatever they can to help me, to assist me. I've been to churches where I didn't know anyone, where I just picked up the phone and called the pastor, and they invited me to their church. And then I go to their church, and after the service, people were coming up to me. They actually make me cry. And I went to a church. It was a predominantly Cameroonian people in the church. I didn't know them. The pastor took off his shirt. He was sweating and he was crying while he was praying for me. That was when I felt the weight of what I'm doing. And that was when I realized this was not about me at all. It was way more
bigger than you.
Bigger than me.
It's very inspiring that, someone from, I don't know what village you're from in Nigeria, but you were able to cross the ocean, get a degree, purchase your own home, start your own business, running for office, and you're making an impact even now. And I think you've always made an impact in people's lives throughout your journey, or at least as long as I've known you. You've always made moves, always been in a position of leadership and authority. I'm just so encouraged by your story, and I think that it's great that you're doing these things. I just want to know what was that drive that pushed you to go through these different obstacles throughout your journey and to succeed?
Well, to succeed, that I will give to God. That's not something that I did. Because a lot of the things that have happened to me through my journey in life happened not because I planned it that way, but because God has helped me. My father passed away just a few weeks after I got into college, and my life changed. After that, I get emotional when I'm talking about my dad because I was very close to him. And my mom had 6 children to raise, and she didn't know how she was going to do it. So I had to be strong for her. I have 4 brothers and a sister to care for. And my mom, a lot of the times, I'll say she was lost. So I was able to build up strength. I don't know how. But one thing that my dad had taught me right from when I was young was how to fast and pray. So I was able to build strength from that. And I think I learned a lot from, even when I was little, growing up in a large family. Even though I'm the first of 6 children from my mother, my father had other children, so I'm from a very big family.
Yeah, it just shows that you've always had authority, and you've used it well, at least from what I can see. And the fact that your people within your church, outside of church, and even back home respect you is just a testament to all the great things that you've done and all the great things you plan to do. So I just have a few more questions before we wrap up.
Okay.
When you win this position as the county council at large, what do you plan to do?
So my primary focus, and this is very personal to me because of my background and where I'm coming from, is education. The fact that Prince George's County currently is ranked at 22 out of 24 in the entire state doesn't sit right.
It's sad.
It is the future. It is the future, and it needs to be fixed. So I'm going to be focusing on the education. My plan is to bring everyone to the table, the parents, the teachers, the leaders, the elected officials, and see how we can work together to make a difference. I mean, we have to pay our teachers better. We have to hire more teachers. We have to provide incentive, whatever we need to do to make sure that the children are getting the education that they need. I'm going to do that. And if it means I have to personally use my money to put a billboard on the street to tell the world, or to tell the residents and the citizens of this county what we need to do, then I will do that. But it's very important to me that we get the education right, because if we get that right, everything else will begin to fall in place. Right now, we're spending more money in the corrections department than we're spending on education in Prince George's County. We should be able to turn that around.
And they're tied together. Education and criminal activity is tied together.
Yes.
When you have more to lose, you do less,
yes,
criminal-wise.
Yes.
I'm very excited. I look forward to all the great things you're going to do. But before we leave, we do have a segment of our show called Candid Confessions. And it's an opportunity for you to confess a secret that you may have or to tell us something about yourself. So what I want you to do is pick a number from 1 to 10, and then I will read out a question associated with that number for you to answer.
Number 1.
Number 1. Number 1. Okay. If you were trapped on an island for 10 days with a celebrity, you had an opportunity to be trapped on an island with a celebrity, which celebrity would it be?
Okay. You're going to find this very funny, but I can't think of anyone. But if Mother Teresa were alive,
Mother Teresa.
Yes, I would rather be trapped with her. And I'll tell you why. Because I just want to be able to learn how she was able to deal with the issues in this world and still be able to be who she was and be able to give so much of herself, and how she wasn't affected by everything else around her, because it's tough. I just would like an opportunity to learn, from her about that. I mean, I know she's probably not a celebrity to you, but to me she is. And I mean,
she's definitely a celebrity in heaven. That I can say.
That's the only thing I can think of right now. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I'll take that. I'll take that. I'm going to ask you another question, because technically she's not a living celebrity. So, what is your favorite fast food restaurant?
Fast food. I really don't do fast food, But my favorite restaurant is Fogo de Chao in DC.
Oh, yeah. I know. We've been there together.
Oh, okay. So you have an idea.
Yes.
Guilty pleasure. I eat a lot of meat.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I eat a lot of beef, and I'm trying to get out of that now. That's one major problem that I have. And so when I first discovered that place, I wanted to scream and tell everyone in the world about the place. So every time I had a guest in town, or I had a friend that I wanted to take out, I just take them to Fogo. And everybody's looking at me like, why are we here?
Yeah.
There's no food. It's all meat and beef and all kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Okay, well, that counts. And, you know, you took me to Fogo de Chao before as well. And as you know, I don't eat red meat. So I know you wasn't too happy that everything was passing me by, but it wasn't great. Well, this was great. Thank you so much for being on Candid Conversation. It's an honor to have you here. As I mentioned before, as you can see, Felicia has so much about her that you can learn from. She went from coming across the ocean to getting her master's, owning her own home, starting her own business, and now running for political office. I'm honored to have her on the show, and I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day, and remember to keep your conversations candid.